Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, as we are in different time zones. To begin, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Kat and Lindsay, Stitchcraft Community Group, and Embroidery Guild of America for giving me a chance and such an amazing platform to share about my research and my book titled Fulkari from Punjab Embroidery in Transition. Let me share my journey. When I was young, I have seen women embroidering fabric, their veils, their personal clothing pieces. In Punjab, the attire is salwar and kameez, and this consists of an A-line shirt and salwar is a gathered trousers. It was common to even ornate an undershirt, which is called as chemise. For Punjabi women, it has always been a priority to decorate her surroundings, articles of day to day use with embroidery, with laces, with crocheting. These are some of the pieces that I found in trunk or chest of 80 years old Punjabi women. And these are certain pieces of tablecloth and carry bags that she embroidered probably 70 years back when I interviewed her. These embroidery pieces shows not only the skill, but the color composition, uniqueness, and creativity of Punjabi women. My upbringing in a Punjabi society and my education in the field of clothing and textiles deepened the love within me for embroidery. I have seen my grandmother spinning yarn and creating daris. Daris are floor coverings for my trousseau. I still have those pieces. And whenever I touch those pieces, I can feel her presence, her love, her blessings pouring down on me. In 1980s, we lived in a city called Patiala. Patiala is a very well known city in Punjab, in India, which is a hub of Fulkari making and is very famous for Fulkari embroidery. And when we were in that city, it was very common to see women visiting our neighborhood to place orders for hand embroidery. Hence, my voyage of working on Fulkari probably started when I was young, as I narrated, and saw many women in my hometown in Patiala district embroidering in a group. There were many more interactions, like my association with a renowned entrepreneur and a national award winner in Fulkari. And as years passed, my passion for Fulkari grew. I'm here to share my some glimpses of my journey of Fulkari and journey of the women who make Fulkari, who craft Fulkari. Journey of the vibrant tradition of Punjab. So let's see what is Fulkari. Fulkari is amalgamation of two words, fool and kari. Fool stands for flower and kari stands for work. So it is a floral work. On this slide, one can see different motifs of flowers spread on a base fabric, a cotton fabric that is called as khaddar. And that is why Fulkari is often related with garden. These flowers have a power to convey feeling of happiness, love for the one who wears it. It is an embroidery technique, and it is not only the technique, but the product is also called as Fulkari. So what I mean is the stitch or the embroidery is Fulkari and the product is also called as Fulkari. So this is where I am placed, and this is where Fulkari is being made in India. This is a state of Punjab, and Punjab is in India. And this part of this is one of the city of Punjab or district of Punjab, that is Patiala, which is hub of Fulkari making. Though there are many other places which is Fulkari, where Fulkari is being made. So Fulkari is a part of women's attire. It was worn over a shirt and a skirt called ghagra. So these are, in this slide, one can see that two women, they are just demonstrating it for me how they used to wear fulkari. It was also used to refer to simple and sparsely embroidered odhani or shawls. So around 100 or 200 years back, there were no woolen shawls which were there in India. And women used to use only khadar or cotton fabric. And this cotton fabric was embroidered with stitches. And this odhani, this veil, this shawl is called as fulkari. These drapes were part of daily life of an average Punjabi woman. These sheets or odhanis were so decorated that these were usually referred as ornamental sheets, garden in bloom, and they were also called as wedding shawls. That is why this textile is also referred as bridal textile too. Fulkari was primarily a part of dowry. The quantum of these beautifully embroidered wraps given to a bride in her dowry was regarded as symbolic of economic status of bride's paternal family. Now here on slide, one can see that women are wearing two different kind of attire. One is salwar, the trouser, and a shirt which is called as kameez, and an odhani or a shawl or a scarf which is 2.5 meters long. And the other woman is wearing a skirt called as ghagra, teamed with a shirt which is called as kurti, and then a scarf, a veil, again 2.5 meters long, lightweight fabric, which is used as a veil. And along with it, it was there was the fulkari was worn over this whole attire. I'm sorry. Fulkari is symbol of happiness. Fulkari is symbol of prosperity. Fulkari is symbol of being married. The rough and coarse fabric which is used for making fulkari is symbolic of colorful life of Punjabi women, but the tough life of Punjabi women because it is coarse. And the rich glossy work, the rich embroidery on this textile, it refers to dreams and aspirations of Punjabi women. Fulkari is symbolic of love and emotion. That is why one can find lot of fulkaris embroidered with floral spread or flowers. There are a lot of folklore which are which are related to fulkari or which has fulkari word in it, and which is on fulkari. One of the folklore says this fulkari is embroidered by my mother. I embrace it. I hug it again and again with love and affection, as it has warmth of my mother. So this is exactly what I was saying, that my, whenever I touch those daris, those pieces which were made by my grandmother for me, when I she is no more, but when I touch those pieces, I can still feel that she is there. She's giving, she's pouring blessings on me. It has her warmth. Fulkari was a domestic art. It was never made for sale. These pieces were embroidered by women for their own use and for the use of other family members, and were not for sale in the market. These were invariably ceremonies, especially related to wedding, festivals, and and celebrations. So in this slide, one can see the center top one. This ceremony is called as a Jago ceremony, and this ceremony is sorry. This ceremony is prior to wedding, and in this ceremony, women are draped in fulkari, and Jago stands for waking up. It is a pre-wedding ritual. It is held usually one night before the wedding, where the relatives of the bride as well as the bridegroom, they dance throughout night. And in this ceremony, a woman, usually bride or bridegroom's maternal aunt, she carries a copper vessel, and there are mustard lamps in it. They are lit, and women, they go around in the village, in their neighborhood, to announce the celebrations and festival. And if you look at this picture, you will find women wearing, fulkaris in reds and greens, and they are all colorful. uh, on the top right, one can see bride and bridegroom covered under a canopy of fulkari. Many pre-wedding ceremonies are performed under the canopy of fulkari, which is considered as bringing fortune, happiness, prosperity in the life of bride or bridegroom. Even mother, at the entrance of her house, she is there to welcome the newlywed, and mother is also draped in fulkari. So, fulkari is part of all festivals, all celebrations of a Punjabi family. How this craft was learned? Mothers, grandmothers, they used to teach fulkari making to their daughters. Lessons in fulkari were started when a girl was around 8 to 9 years of her age, and she had to embroider initially on rough fabrics, plain fabrics, and later on a coarse fabric for fulkari for her trousseau, which showed her skill, art, hard work, representing her eligibility as bride. Women, especially young unmarried girls, after completing all the household work, they used to get together at a common place, engaged in a variety of group activities like spinning, weaving, knitting, crocheting, and embroidering. And usually, 20 to 25 fulkaris were kept aside by Punjabi families for giving as wedding gifts to each daughter of the household. I can still remember interviewing a woman in Punjab, and she told me that she has embroidered more than 100 fulkaris and types of fulkaris in her life when she was young. Not only embroidery, but other activities or skills were taught to girls so that they can become good homemakers. Fabric of fulkari was hand spun, hand woven, home dyed, coarse cotton, which was called as khadar, and it was woven in narrow width. So, first step of fulkari making was spinning. So, this is a small clipping of women. She is working, or she is spinning the yarn for making various articles. It can be for daris, it can be for case, it can be for fulkaris. Women used to sit in groups called trinjan, and they used to spin day and night. The next step of after spinning was weaving. Uh, Women either used to spin yarn, which was either given to a local weaver, or they wove at home to get a fabric called as khadar, which was the base fabric for fulkari. And this is how the khadar was woven. I met this woman in a village which is in Bathinda district, and she is weaving case for her daughters. So a loom has been set at her place, and I was lucky enough to see her working. So she is making small strips of pieces for case, and that will be joined later on. So 2 to 3 such bits were woven, and they were joined as a base of fulkari. And it is visible in this slide where strips are joined with a hand stitching, and then it was embroidered. It also details how fulkari strips were joined, the image. This slide shows the intricate work of fulkari. Khaddar was usually dyed at home or it was given to professional dyers. And majorly or majority of fulkaris are found in the base of red or shades of reds or browns. And why red? Because red was associated with youth and it was the most widespread tone. Fulkaris are used during marriage and other festival, and red is considered auspicious, especially by Hindus and Sikhs. So red was most favored or favorite fabric color, and other than that, white was used by mature women or widows. Black and blue colors were usually used for everyday worn shawls. Black and blue were not so preferred in Western Punjab, but white was preferred in Eastern Punjab. And over this red colored textile khaddar, silk floss yarn, untwisted silk floss yarn, which is called as pat, was used for embroidery. As you can see, the orange colored yarn is pat. And along with that, either white untwisted silk floss yarn or white cotton yarn was used to achieve the effect of fulkari. Part of red color was used to symbolize passion, white for purity, golden or yellow for desire and abundance, green for nature and fertility, orange for a mix of desire and divine energy. The stitches used. Darning stitch, long and short darning stitch was used to create simple as well as complex designs in fulkari. Women embroidered geometrical motifs from the reverse side of the khaddar fabric. This is the right side of the fabric, and embroidery was done from the other side. Darning stitches were used in straight lines to take up a single yarn from the material at a time, creating floats on the other side. That on the reverse side of khaddar always appear in dot form. When one line of needlework was finished, the follow or the adjacent line was embroidered and stitches were made in the next line, picking up one yarn before or after the stitch taken in the previous line. And that is why one can see the ascending or descending order of the stitches and the patterns were created. And along with this, many other stitches were used like chain stitch, stem stitch, especially for outlining the figures. This was very popular in case of pieces like senchi. Senchi is a kind of fulkari, and in the slide also you can see that this is a stem stitch which is differentiating one part with the other. Then along with it, Holbein stitch or double side running stitch was also used, especially in a kind of a fulkari which was chob. Buttonhole stitch and a herringbone stitch was used. And in the slide or on the slide, you can see that buttonhole stitch is used for giving strength to the selvage. You can see the effect of counted stitch embroidery. It was a counted yarn embroidery. There were no patterns or books or catalogs from which the designs could be copied. These designs were passed down from one generation to another, or women used to see each other's work and they used to make something out of it. And each family had its own characteristic style. And with practice and experience, each woman was able to develop her own collection. And most of the time, patterns were never drawn on the fabric. Women used to count each and every thread of khaddar, and lot of care was taken. She used to do it meticulously so that there is no mistake in the design. If there is a mistake, she used to do it again. So basic geometrical shapes were used in creating designs like triangle, square, rectangle, vertical, and horizontal lines. These shapes were further incorporated to produce complicated patterns, and further with appropriate selection of colors, highly stylized motifs were produced. And here one can see motifs of flowers, half flowers, flowers like cotton, sunflower, mustard flower, lotus flower was very common. There were many more flowers. Fruits like oranges, pomegranates were also embroidered. Vegetables like chilies, cauliflowers, maize cob was also there was also embroidered by women on this base fabric. And this is a pulkari where reverse side as well as the right side of the tapestry is visible. So one can see that the neatness of the work from the wrong side of the fabric. So women used to embroider from this side and float used to appear on the other side. Many domestic activities were also embroidered, like churning of curd, pounding wheat or corn, spinning of yarn, and many household articles which women used to see around her life, like utensils, rolling pin, brass urn, pitcher, were embroidered on the base fabric. It shows that how ecological surroundings impacted the imagination of craftswomen as they could embroider what they saw around themselves, whether it is flower, whether it is bird, whether it is a human activity, uh, just by combining basic shapes of squares, circles, triangles. And she also embroidered articles. Parrot. Parrot is a very common bird and loved bird in Punjab. It signifies union. So women embroidered parrots on the phulkari. This slide. It shows two distinct kinds of phulkari. On the right side, it is phulkari, where embroidery ornaments the cloth, and there is a space. One can see the base or the khaddar fabric. And on the left hand side, this is a very richly embroidered pulkari, which is called as a bagh or garden. This it was very important for women to not only embroidered fulkari, but they also tried their hands on bagh, because in bagh one cannot see even a single yarn of fabric. There were many more different kinds of fulkaris. Now here one can see that the flowers are spread on the base of fabric, and one can see borders on all four sides. This fulkari also shows the meticulous work and imagination of craftswomen, and where she has divided the complete fulkari into different sections, and each section is equal in every aspect. So she used to take utmost care while embroidering. This is a kind of fulkari which is called as thirma. Thirma is a piece which is made on white, with usually with a red colored untwisted silk floss yarn. Yes, one can get in magenta and other colors also. This is a kind of fulkari which is typical of western part of Punjab, and this is called as eastern part of Punjab, and this is called as senchi. And senchi usually had mix of animals, birds, day-to-day activities, whatever women saw around themselves, they embroidered it on the fabric. So one can see an owl, a snake, a fish, pigeon, hen, cock, dog, so many creatures on this piece of fabric. This is a peacock fulkari, Moran di fulkari. In Punjabi, we say it Moran di fulkari or More fulkari or peacock fulkari. Peacock is a majestic bird. It is a symbol of beauty. It is a symbol of nobility. It is a symbol of love. So that is why women always embroidered uh, this symbol, as this is a symbol of love, and she embroidered it for trousseau. This is a bridal textile. So this was a very popular kind of fulkari. There were a lot of inspirations around women to to embroider the inspiration on the base fabric. So let's see what all are the inspirations. This is an inspiration from kaudi, which is also called as kauri. Kauri is used as an ornamentation in Punjabi attire, and it is also used in place of a dice in Ludo. So Punjabi women, they used to see these kaudis, and they embroidered these white spaces are called as kaudis. So this bag is referred as kaudi bag. She also took inspiration from rolling pin. So you can see a stylized motif of a rolling pin on bag, and this is called as rolling pin in Punjabi is called as velan. So this is called as velaniya the bag. This is a sweet which is called as barfi in Punjabi. So the motif is a rhombus motif is called as a barfi motif in Punjabi. These are some of the clippings of various bags and fulkaris, which shows that women she saw plants, flowers around her surroundings, and she embroidered it on the base. And this is a motif of wheat stalk, which shows association of women with agriculture, because agriculture is the main profession of Punjabis. And one can also see ornaments embroidered on fulkari. This is a very important ornament worn by, which I think every Punjabi woman has with herself. This is called as jhumka. So women used to embroider uh, jewelry also on khadar pieces. Now, this fulkari was admired by Britishers when they established their rule in India, especially in Punjab, and they discovered these extraordinary, beautiful pieces of craft. They took it to a lot of exhibitions. They tried to commercialize it. And Europeans started to reinterpret this traditional form of embroidery to accommodate it to their requirements. So there was change in color palette, and they tried experimenting with the motifs also. And newer fabrics from the West entered India. And post independence, when there was a partition of India into India and Pakistan, the traditional craft got threatened because women from the elite society, they were attracted towards the refined fabric that came from West. And there was, along with it, there was a change in Punjabi women's dress style after partition of India. Traditional Punjabi ghagra or lenga, it started waning off. It got disappeared, and women were now not eloping themselves in complete sheet of fulkari, which was her identity once, but they were using lightweight veils, and hence there was decline in the usage of fulkari, and hence the making of fulkari. So fulkaris were cut into various garments, and they were women stopped, or the making of fulkari was reduced. But at the same time, government of India wanted to revive the same. And in an attempt to revive and give boost to the craft, many schemes were started. Many handicraft boards were established, and many exhibitions were planned, like All India Handicraft Board, and there were many more boards. And then this craft was used as an empowerment, uh, a tool of empowerment for women, where women were taught the skills or improvised skills of embroidery as well as fulkari. Now, entry of boutiques, there was entry of fashion designers. This added another dimension to the process of reinvention of fulkari. Now, there was change in fabric. There was change in process of making of fulkari. There was change in the color palette. Now designers are interpreting and working on traditional as well as contemporary motifs of fulkari to present something new for the market. Now here one can see block printing. Initially, motifs were never printed on the fabric, but with the change or in the revival process, the process of making of fulkari also got changed, and printers came into the picture, and they used to print fabrics with the fulkari motifs. And the process of making fulkari changed. Initially, it was from the wrong side of the fabric. Now women started working on the right side, from the right side also, because printing made it easier for women to make fulkari from the right side. And on top of it, because women were not just embroidering on khaddar. In khaddar, it is very easy to count yarns, but on fabrics like chiffon, georgette, it's very difficult. So fabric also got changed. It was not only khaddar or cotton, but silk, chiffon, georgette, chinon chiffon. Many fabrics came into existence as a base for fulkari. Even color palette changed. This is an artificial or synthetic put thread or synthetic floss yarn, which is untwisted. And this is the kind of, these are the kind of colors which are at present used in making fulkari. And you can see a wide range of colors available in fulkari. Now, how do they embroider? Earlier, they never used to use frames, but many women, they make fulkari with frames as well as without using the frames. They sit in groups, they chat with each other, they enjoy the company of their friends, and they make fulkaris either for their personal usage as well as for the market. Now, this is the color palette. This is a multicolored fulkari embroidery, especially for as a wedding veil or a wedding shawl. This is fulkari in monochromatic tones. So earlier fulkari, there was set color palette is elaborate. One can find even black colored fulkari, white colored fulkari, monochromatic fulkari in monochromatic tones, contrast fulkari in contrast color combination. And these are some of the motifs embroidered in different ways. These are certain motifs where sequins are also inserted within the embroidery to give it a different look. Now, fulkari is being redesigned in the form of expensive bedspreads, dining tablecloths, table runners, footwear, canopies for decorative purposes, many lifestyle products, as I mentioned, footwear or Punjabi jutti, wallets, keychains, coasters. The product range is endless. Now you can see this is the product range which was not found earlier. It is there in the market. This is a Punjabi salwar or a trouser, and it is embroidered with fulkari. A bag of fulkari. This is a designer. She is creating fulkari on different kind of different lifestyle products. Craftswomen, they are engaged in this activity of fulkari making for preparing innumerable lifestyle products. And in the end, I would like to say that creativity is a never-ending process, and this beautiful form of embroidery will keep reinventing itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta. That was a wonderful, wonderful introduction to fulkari. And I think several people have commented just how wonderful it is that not only are the artists so skillful in creating these beautiful detailed designs, but they're so personal. The old ones are so personal and really reflect each woman's experience of botany in her neighborhood or a cooking experience, or all sorts of symbols are included in it. It was just really wonderful.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so we have a couple questions. Some people are asking what kind of dye was used. Now, probably there's synthetic dyes for modern use, but traditionally, what kind of dye substances were used to create Polkari?
I will just, okay. Yes, I interviewed a lot of craftswomen. They used to say that we used to take out dye from Magishta, that is a madder root. Madder was available, so madder was used to dye the base color of Fulkari. So what they used to do it, they used to pour that root in a pot, and it was done with approximation. So you will not find any two Fulkaris of the same color. Sometimes the red color was deepened somewhere, if they wanted a little of coffee colored fabric, so they used to put iron nails in it. This is what they have responded to me. So they used to add more color if they wanted a darker color of fabric, so they added more material on into their dye bath. So it was they used to take out color from madder roots.
Wonderful, interesting. Okay. Another question is somebody is saying, wow, the patterns weren't traditionally drawn on the textiles. How did they count the warp and weft threads to get such perfect alignment?
Okay, I tell you. What they did was, when this sheet was usually 1.5 to 2.5 meters. The dimensions were 1.5 by 2.5 meters. So they used to use a broomstick to mark those boxes. First, the whole base or the whole Fulkari was divided into different sections. They never used to count it, because they used to the coaching of Fulkari was used to start when every girl was around 8 7 8 years old. So she used to work on, um, you say, she used to in order to have that skill of making Fulkari for her trousseau, she practiced for good 5 6 years on rough pieces of fabric. She used to create fabric. If it was good, it was kept for trousseau, for her trousseau. If it was okay, it was used in day to day articles. I have also created few pieces for myself, not in Fulkari, but in other you can say other creative techniques I have used. But yes, there was a trend. So women used to divide the whole Fulkari into different sections. Borders were marked not with chalk, not with pen, but with approximation. So women used to start it from the center of the Fulkari, the whole sheet from the center of the Fulkari, and they use that broomstick to, if they wanted to have those squares, so they used to use those broomsticks and they used to mark those squares. And yes, every motif was counted. Every motif was counted. That was there. She used to count, over a period of time. I met, women, a woman in Punjab who made around more than 100 Fulkaris and bags. So
Amazing.
in case if you make 100 Fulkaris or bags, then you don't need to count it. It comes automatically.
Yeah, so
Because
these are highly trained, highly skilled artisans.
exactly. So they used to do it with precision. If something has gone wrong, they will take it off and they will do it again.
Okay. Now, later in your lecture, you mentioned that modern day Polkari artists use embroidery hoops. And I'm
Yes.
wondering, if you didn't use the embroidery hoop in the traditional sense, how did they keep their tension so even? And if there's like no puckering, it looks just perfectly flat.
Okay. Even in today's time, you will find two kind of artisans. One is using an embroidery hoop. One, they don't use an embroidery hoop, even on lightest of the fabric. What they do, they hold or they stretch the fabric between their knees, between
Really?
their knees and yes, and hands, and they do it. And they do it perfectly. Those who do it, sandwiching the fabric between the knees, they say that if we use an embroidery hoop, it it really sometimes the fabric goes off from the place where they put in a hoop, especially very lightweight fabric. So there are two kinds of artisans who use embroidery hoop and who don't use embroidery hoop. But
Yeah.
yes, when it was when they used to make khadar is a very heavy fabric. So there was a there you can go without without
Mhm.
mm,
Tension.
stretching it on an embroidery hoop. You can do it,
Yeah.
but yes, again, skill is required to have a proper uh, tension on the fabric as well as on the yarn. You need to have a good control on the fabric as well as on the embroidery yarn.
You know, as a modern stitcher, I'm so obsessed with getting the right toys that hearing people use broomstick and their knees to stretch, it's like, it's
Yes,
wonderful. Women just used what they had.
they do it. I have seen it. There are a lot of women who don't even print. I have just shown the images of printed. In the present times also, there are women who don't even print and they make it with approximation.
Yeah,
All
that's
motifs with,
very skilled,
yes.
very skilled. Okay, some comment, just a general comment. I love how the colors are repeating within the overall composition, and the motif repeats across the surface, create a very complex visual rhythm. And also, some artists are really excellent at integrating the background color into the overall design. That's just wonderful. Okay, let's see. For products, is the fabric embroidered specifically with the end product in mind, or is it stitched as yardage first and then worked into the product?
uh, in the present times, what is done is because vendors are into the picture, so and the embroidery costs a lot. So what they do, they get the panels embroidered, or sometimes they mark the panel, they get it printed accordingly, and then later on cut the fabric and stitch the fabric.
Okay,
So the outline of the product is marked, then it is printed, so that embroidery is not cut when they are stitching it.
so there's no waste. Yeah, it's okay, great.
There is no waste. Even if there is a waste, so they try to use it in one or the other way, because in case certain, there are vendors who usually cut fulkari and get it converted into different forms also, but usually it is printed according to the desired place.
It's so precious and time consuming that that makes sense commercially. So somebody is asking about, was Polkari once more, was it, it was considered a folk art, but I think you mentioned that there are some women who created Polkari that were very high end using silks, and then they're used throughout different strata of culture. Is that true? All women of all different economic backgrounds?
Yes, definitely. It reflected the economic status of the family, because silk, earlier it used to be pure silk, and for making a fulkari, good amount of silk was required. So definitely the heavier the work, more is the cost of fulkari. And if more number of fulkaris are prepared for the trousseau, so that means more amount of, or more money is involved um, in preparing those pieces. So definitely that has always been there. But along with that, there were two options. One was only silk, where even white yarn was was silk, and in certain cases, white, instead of white silk, white cotton yarn was used along with the untwisted silken floss yarn, which is colored. So hence the cost of fulkari varied by usage of white colored cotton yarn and white colored silk yarn. But yes, the kind of fulkari which was made by women, it was entirely related with the economic status. Maybe, women used to prepare lesser number of fulkaris, but you could find one good or two good or three or at least 10 good fulkaris in every household.
Mm. You're wearing Polkari today. Is this your grandmother's Polkari?
No, it is not my grandmother's fulkari. She made daris for me.
Mm.
She made daris. Those are rugs, those are floor coverings that can be placed on the floor, or they can be placed on a cot, on a
Oh,
bed.
I could
Yes.
never walk on a Polkari. You said a rug. Ooh. Okay, let's see. Is the hand embroidered Polkari popular nowadays as well as the machine work, or is the machine work supplanting the hand embroidered?
Yes. In the present times, one can find machine made fulkari, digital printed fulkari. The embroidery is getting transformed into digital prints, and the prints, you can get a printed fulkari also, but handmade fulkari has no replacement.
Yes.
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 So there is a market for machine made also and handmade fulkari also, because handmade fulkari is really expensive. It
Mhm.
is you really have to take care of it when you have to preserve it for longer time, because it's handmade. You have to be very careful when you have to take care of it. So yes, there are people who are only takers of handmade work, but there are people who just want to have a feel of taking a fulkari, so they go for machine made. But handmade fulkari is there, and there is lot of demand of handmade fulkari.
So you need a loving relative to make you one. Okay, so I have another question about Polkari that's related to the time frame. What is the earliest known Polkari, and did it grow out of a different tradition, or did it just was it borrowed from some other culture and brought into the Polkari region?
Okay, now the fulkari, there is no the exact the origin of fulkari is not known. Even in a Sikh scripture, uh, Guru Granth Sahib, Guru Nanak Dev, the Sikh Guru, the first Sikh Guru, he said, "Kad kashida pehre choli ta tum na jano nari." It's in Punjabi. It says that you are considered a perfect woman if you can embroider your own top or your own blouse. So that is the earliest reference of embroidery in Punjab. And there are lot of stories which are related to the origin of fulkari, or you can say the cross cultural influence of fulkari. uh, some says that it came from Persia, because there you have a kind of embroidery which is called as gulkari, which is also similar to fulkari. If and There are a lot of researchers and historians, they say it came from Central Asia, uh, because India got divided with time, and it was a bigger region earlier. So if you have a chance to visit, uh, or if you have a chance to see embroidery from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, you could see that there is a very close relationship in the stitches. There
Mm.
is a top called jumlo. It has certain motifs which is similar to that of fulgari. I didn't include it in my slides because the time frame was very less. I could have included, but yes, there one can see that embroidery was traveling. along the Silk Route also.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
within India also, you can see that Fulkari is also similar to an embroidery, which is also a counted thread embroidery that is called as Soof embroidery. It is from Gujarat. It also, Punjab is in northern part of India, and in the southern part, there is an embroidery uh, called Kasuti embroidery. It resembles chob of Fulkari. So there is similarities. We say that stitches travel and embroidery also travel. Even in Afghanistan, there is a prayer cloth. So on that, you can find, the flowers of Fulkari, which is in
Huh.
India, similar to, you can find. Yes, the color scheming is different, but there is similarity.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Just like other textile traditions have traveled.
Exactly.
Okay, someone has a really great question. I know in Japan, there's a real national push to preserve people who are called Japan's national treasures, who learn, these are traditional artisans. And people are wondering if the Indian government supports these kind of historic textiles. And do you know any of the groups that exist? And somebody would like to get in touch with the groups. We can always put that group in an email if you want to send us those links later.
Yes, there are people, there are artisans who are embroidering, but they are embroidering in different pockets. There are initiatives from Indian government as well as Punjab government. In Punjab government, there is a organization which is called as PSIEC, and it promotes the work of artisans, because if there is no market, artisans can create products, but they cannot sell products. So there are markets. There are markets which are these are the platforms which are given to artisans. They can prepare the products, and they can go to these platforms and they can sell their products. And there are a lot of exhibitions which Indian government has been organizing. Ministry of Textiles is regularly organizing for these craftswomen, because this is primarily a work of craftswomen. But in the recent time, the supply chain uh, is different. Earlier it was only for the personal usage, but in the present time, you can find it has two meanings. One is for personal and one for the market. So it is a tool for empowerment also.
Great, great. And someone is asking, do people ever share Polkari with either within the family or out of the family? If there's somebody who can't afford a Polkari and would like to borrow one, are those things typically done or no?
Yes, it is done, because in weddings, Fulkari is given to the daughters as well as to daughter-in-laws. All wedding rituals or ceremonies are incomplete without Fulkari. As I described one ceremony which is called as Jago in Punjabi, where women, there are theme ceremonies where they say that, we all will wear Fulkari. So in Jago, every woman wear a Fulkari, and this does two things. One is that our culture, our heritage is preserved, and when you wear Fulkari, you feel so nice about your own self, because you look very beautiful. And secondly, it adds to the ceremony, because Fulkari is always associated with happiness, with ceremonies, with dance, with joy. So people love to wear Fulkaris on weddings and even on festivals. There are a lot of festivals which we celebrate throughout our year. So we do use Fulkari, and it is also used for gifting. There are people who gift Fulkaris to all the people who come for wedding of their daughters or sons.
I think that's one of the most moving things about your talk is not only are these pieces beautiful, but there's so much emotion in them. And
Exactly.
when you spoke about your grandmother and feeling your grandmother's love through those pieces,
Yes.
it's so warm and so celebratory and joyful. It's just terrific. Okay, so if somebody wants to learn Pulkari, is there a place where they can learn Pulkari from an artisan and an expert?
You are most welcome. I know Fulkari. In India, especially in the Punjab region, we rarely promote learning Fulkari. Though girls, they don't. Every girl does not make Fulkari as they used to do it earlier. But those girls who are studying in college, there are a lot of competitions which are being held, like youth festival.
Mm.
We have a festival like youth festival. It is a cultural festival, and it also celebrate handicrafts of Punjab, where entries are invited from various students, those who know Fulkari, and they embroider Fulkari, and it is it is it is a kind of learn Fulkari. And we have lot of courses where in which we have a curriculum of teaching Fulkari, like where I am teaching, University Institute of Fashion Technology in Punjab University, Chandigarh. We have a special course on traditional Indian textiles and embroideries, and under that we teach one of the embroidery as Fulkari, where we ask students to learn different motifs. They experiment with motifs. They sometimes they sit with artisans also. We call artisans also to our place, and we try experimenting with the colors and motifs and products.
That's wonderful. It's a great way to keep the tradition alive and to find new ways of expressing different aspects of modern culture too. That's great. Dr. Gupta, I could listen to you all day, but I think we need to move on to the rest of our program. So we want to say thank you very much